Hey guys, welcome back to another video on PS4 Linux. And today's video is gonna be special because it has nothing to do with PS4 Linux. In this video, we're gonna discuss how we could install OpenWrt, a Linux-based OS for routers on an Amplifi HD router. For those of you who don't know, Amplifi HD router was launched back in 2016. And being a very compact device, it was a very preferred device among both home users and office users. Let's begin with the first question. What is OpenWrt? So on your screens now you can see what OpenWrt team has to say about their own software. For those of you who found it pretty confusing, let me put it in very simple terms. So this is an open source software / OS that can be installed on almost every other router that you can find, even on routers that are pretty old, like back from 2012 and stuff. So once you have this installed on your router, it opens up a hell lot of possibilities. Things that you could not do on the manufacturer's firmware is now possible with OpenWrt. But it does come with its caveats, but it gives you complete control over your router. That's not the only benefit of having OpenWrt on your router. It is frequently updated, and being community managed, it does get frequent security updates. This is a boon for old router owners. Many of these routers have stopped getting updates from their manufacturers, and it is always safe to have OpenWrt, which does have the latest security patches in. But this does not mean that every other router that has access to OpenWrt is a router that has stopped getting updates from the manufacturer. The best example for this is the router in question, Amplifi HD, which got its latest update a few months ago. So this is a pretty educational video where I'll be discussing how you could open up this router, that is disassemble it, install UART wires, and then install OpenWrt on it. Now, as for this whole tutorial and video, take a quick look at this disclaimer. Okay. And now, if you're okay with the disclaimer and if you want to move on, let's quickly discuss a few devs who deserve special praise at this moment. Without them, this would not have been possible. The first developer is Alexanderhenne. Here is his GitHub repo. With the help of his findings that you can find on this GitHub repo, we can actually solder or connect a TTL reader. All of this will be discussed in detail in the coming sections of the video. But for now, just understand that we are able to install OpenWrt, or rather tinker with the Amplifi HD, only because of this GitHub repo that you see here. Alexanderhenne was able to find J11 headers on one of the boards that you see within an Amplifi HD router. And with this, we will be able to do things with the router that were not possible earlier. Okay. He also has a pretty detailed guide here for people who want to create their own custom firmwares for the Amplifi HD and stuff. You can check that out as well. Okay. And then comes the next dev, that is skramstad, as you can see right here. This is the person who ported OpenWrt for Amplifi HD. And here is a commit that does add support for Amplifi HD to the official OpenWrt Git, as you can see here. Okay. This also has the necessary instructions to be able to boot and install OpenWrt on your Amplifi HD. This is pretty advanced for people who are new to this. And then we have the next dev, that is StephanAAU, who went ahead and wrote a detailed article on this topic, that is installing OpenWrt on an Amplifi HD. And he also made some corrections in the earlier processes. For example, the TFT boot thing. He was also able to make out mistake in the pinout provided by Alexanderhenne here. And I have verified this, and StephanAAU was right about the pinout, which was mirrored in the original one. So you can check out my blog. Everything that you see in this video is also available on my blog as a textual article, along with the pinout diagrams and proper stuff. So you can check that out as well. The link is in the description. Okay. And on top of that, StephanAAU has also provided additional troubleshooting steps for people who are not able to boot OpenWrt properly on their Amplifi HD. Okay. These three are the devs. A huge shout out to them and a huge thanks to them as well. Okay. So this was a quick introduction to OpenWrt on Amplifi HD. Now let's get to the actual point of the video, that is how to install and set up OpenWrt on Amplifi HD. So this does require disassembling of your Amplifi HD router, and I would say basic to medium soldering skills as well. Okay. So let's first look into the requirements for this whole process. First of all, you're obviously going to need the Amplifi HD router. Then, to be able to access the UART part of the router, you will need this small thing. It's called a mini USB to TTL reader. This is also available in Type-C or micro USB formats. You can choose whatever you want according to your preferences. Okay. All of these have been linked in the blog. You can check the link in the description. Okay. And then if you want, you can choose male to female jumper wires. There are three kinds. this is the one that you should be looking for, the middle one. As you can see, this is the male port and this is the female one. Okay, these come pretty cheap as well. Okay, the same can be said for the TTL reader as well. Those come under $2 to $3, and this I guess comes under $3 to $4. Only 3 wires are enough for this. Okay, and then obviously you're gonna need the soldering iron, flux and lead, and then you're gonna need some prying tools. It depends on how you wanna go about. If you don't care about the cosmetic look of the router, you can easily get away with a simple flathead screwdriver. Okay, that's what I use, by the way. You'll see it in an animation in the upcoming part of the video. But if you care about the beauty of your router, you could go for some plastic based tools like the prying tools that you can find online. Again, all of these have been linked in the blog. You can check some awesome tools for that. Okay, and then we're gonna need 64-bit Windows. I would prefer it to be Windows 10 or rather Windows 11. Okay, now I'm gonna link a few pieces of software that we're gonna require for this tutorial. Okay, the first one is OpenSSH server. Again, linked in the description. Go do check that blog out. Okay. And then we're gonna need the OpenWrt firmware for Amplifi HD. As you can see, I have already downloaded it here. And then we're gonna need PuTTY, WinMD5 and TFTPD. Okay, all of these have been linked in the blog. You can go check that out. Again, the link is in the description. TFTPD is the only among the bunch that has to be installed right now. Okay, you'll have to download it and install it right away. The installation is pretty straightforward. You don't have to change anything. Just use this default settings. Okay. Now let's get to the actual tutorial part. For the sake of better understanding, I have divided this tutorial into 3 parts. Okay, the first part being disassembly and UART header setup. The second being backup of original Amplifi firmware and copying it to Windows. And the third being the actual installation and setting up of OpenWrt on Amplifi HD. Okay, so the first part of this whole tutorial is obviously the disassembly and UART header setup. Okay, I'm going to quickly show you a GIF. Okay, so this is our Amplifi HD router. We have a white plastic housing on the top, and this, as you can see here, this bottom part is a translucent white base. Okay, so we'll have to separate these before beginning, and this GIF does help you understand how that works. In this GIF, I'm going to be using a flathead screwdriver. I go from the bottom up and create a groove and create a gap enough to reach the white plastic, as you can see right here, and then push it up. Okay, so that the white plastic housing comes apart from the translucent base, as you can see in this video. A clearer GIF of this process is available on my blog. Do check that out as well. You can watch this a few times. Okay, and as you can see, this white plastic housing, I'm going to show you the image of it. This white plastic housing on top, it has 2 layers. So when you do use your prying tool or your screwdriver, make sure that you're bypassing both these layers. Do not mistakenly enter into the gap between these 2 layers. You have to go deeper. Okay, bypassing these 2 layers, and then when you hit a groove, just push up. Okay, as you can see right here, the screwdriver goes in, I go into the top, and then I just gently wiggle the screwdriver and push it upwards against the translucent base, and there you can see a small gap is created. Okay, that gap, as you can see right here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the power of my hands to pull these apart. In one hand, hold the translucent base, and on the other, the plastic white housing, and pull these apart. But make sure that you're not applying unnecessary force. Okay, you can just pull these apart to reach this point, and from there to this point. Okay, and from now on, once you have these parts loose, you have to be careful, because there is a cable connecting the display on this and the speaker on this to the bottom board that you see in this portion. Okay, so you have to make sure that you're not applying a lot of force that might rip this cable apart. And once you completely remove this housing, this is what you're going to see. This is the cable that I was talking about. It goes into the third, that is the bottom board on the Amplifi HD. And if you were blessed with little raccoon-like hands like me and the greatest technician that's ever lived, wiggle those fingers in between and pull this apart. It will come out very easily. Or you could wait for the whole disassembly process to complete and then pull this out. I would not recommend that. It's safer to pull it out right now so that it gives you free space to work. Okay, and now this is the top board that you can see, and this is the middle board, and this is the bottom board. Let me get you a clearer view of the top board. Here it is. As you can see, it has 3 screws, and we also have these heavily glued coaxial cables. Okay, we have to make sure not to rip these off. These are pretty long, so there are very less chances of you ripping them off until you try very hard. Okay, so what you have to do is you have to unscrew these 3. Okay, and you have to slowly wiggle this top board from the middle board. Okay, It is safer to move it in one direction, because in the other directions these cables are going to block it. So find that direction and then just wiggle it out till you see the middle board, as you can see in this diagram. Okay, as you can see, the coaxial cable from the top board does connect to the middle board. Make sure that you don't rip these off. These are pretty strong, but if you do rip these off, I gotta hand it out to you, because those are pretty strong. Okay, and then we will have to unscrew this one, which connects the middle board to the base. Okay, and let me show you how the middle board and the bottom board are connected to each other. They are connected with these breadboard like pins and sockets. So all you have to do is just pull the middle board upwards. Okay, loosening it from these pins. Okay, all you have to do is just pull it vertically upwards. Okay, you would be safe there. And this would be the bottom board and this would be the middle board. Okay, so once you have the top and the middle board separated from the bottom board, you can work on the middle board, because the middle board has the UART headers. Let me show you that quickly. As you can see, check for this portion which says J11. Okay, this is the portion that is of interest to us, because this is the J11 header that we're going to solder to. Okay, this is a quick pinout diagram. This is a ground terminal, this is the TX terminal, and this is the RX terminal. We'll have to solder all these three, and we're going to talk about this portion later in the video. Let me quickly just show you how this J11 header looks like. Okay, the top side of the middle board, as you can see in this diagram, does have a small metal or plastic sheet covering this J11 UART header. I tried to rip this off, but a small remnant of it is still on my board. So be careful while ripping it off. It won't break anything, but it is cleaner if you can rip it off cleanly. Okay, if not, it's not an issue. Okay, it can stay like that right there. And as you can see, I've already soldered the wires here, and this was the top side of the middle board. Okay, and this would be the underside. Okay, I would recommend that you solder the cables bottom up. Okay, as you can see right here. For the middle board, this is because there is an obstruction on the top side of the middle board that we're gonna see in a later image. Okay, so once you have soldered those, it is time to solder them back to this TTL reader. Okay, here you have two options. The first option is obviously these little headers that you can see right here. This is a ground, this is RXD, and this is TXD. Now this is something interesting. You have to be very careful here. If you don't do this properly, the UART won't work at all. Okay, the ground terminal from the router has to go to the ground header on the TTL reader, while the TX terminal on the router has to go to the RXD terminal for it to work. Okay, RXD terminal on the TTL reader. Okay, while the RX terminal on the router has to connect to the TXD terminal or the header on the TTL reader. Okay, obviously these locations might vary. That is, the location of these headers might vary or depending on your TTL reader. But this is the general plan of how things work on the UART front. Okay, and as for VCC, you can leave that as it is. No need to solder this. Okay, and this is if you're using simple wires like I did. But if you've got jumper wires, there's another option to connect them to this terminal. Obviously, the male part of the jumper wires will have to be soldered to these. Okay, there's a very informative video that shows soldering into pinholes. I will link to it in the description. You can check that out as well. Now, if you've got jumper wires, you also have the option of just plugging in the female portion of the jumper wires into these pins that you see right here. As you can see, these are named properly here. So this would be the RX, this would be the TX, and this would be the GND, that is the ground. Okay, these texts that you see pertain to these pins, and these are different. So do not get confused with these, especially this portion. As you can see, it says both TXD and GND. So the TXD pertains to this and GND pertains to these pins. Okay, so depending on what you have, jumper wires or not, decide if you want to solder it or just use the female headers on your jumper wires. Okay, so once we have that set, next we have to decide how we want to run these cables. So if running UART is temporary for you, you can decide how you want to run it. Okay, if that's the case, you can just keep the router open, that is the housing and the translucent base apart, and then run the cable between the gap. Okay, into your TTL reader. But if you want to make it permanent, this is something that you could try. This is what I have done. I have drilled a hole on the top of the router and then routed the cables like this. As you can see, this is the middle board and this is a UART headers, as you can see right here. And I have just routed them towards the top beside this rubber thing that you see right here. And then I have routed the cables through the hole, which also houses the coaxial cable that we saw in the earlier images. Okay, and through that I have routed the cable to the top and then towards the outside of the router. Okay, I do plan on using it from time to time. That's why I've chosen this setup. but it depends on you what you want to go with. Okay, now if you did everything perfectly, we are now ready to test if UART works or not. Okay, to do that, first of all, what you're going to do is plug a USB cable into the TTL reader and connect it to your PC using that cable. Okay, and then power the router. Also connect the internet Ethernet cable or to the internet port on your router, as well as connect a LAN cable from the router to your PC. Okay, once that is done, what you have to do is go into PuTTY. Okay, and then switch to serial. Okay, now this is where we have to specify our COM port. To find your COM port, all you have to do is right click on the start button, go to device manager, and once you're in, just go to this part. Okay, expand this part, that is ports, COM and LPT. Now this is my USB serial port. Look for a device that says USB serial port and note down its COM number. That is, in my case, it is COM 7. So the COM port is 7. Okay. If you have multiple USB serial ports on your PC, all you have to do is disconnect the one that is connected to your router and then reconnect it to find the COM port. Now, once you have that, just close this. Okay. And then change COM 1 to COM 7 and change this speed from 9600 to 115200. Okay, this is important because if you don't do this right now, what happens is that you will find gibberish on the terminal. Okay, now once that's done and the router is powered on, all you have to do is click on open, and as you can see, this is what your router is doing. So that is what UART means. You can actually see what your router is doing. This is the demeshed output that you see on your screen right now. Okay, that's awesome. You can even enter the shell and try out commands as you would do on a Linux system. Let me show you how that's done. Okay, so this does show me that UART is working properly on my setup. Okay, if it does not, you will have to recheck the wiring and stuff. And maybe there's a slight chance that your TTL reader might not be functioning as expected. Also, some TTL readers might require extra drivers. Do check the review of the TTL reader before you buy them on Amazon or whatever platform you choose. Okay, anyways, let me show you how to quickly enter the shell right now. Okay, for that, all I have to do is click on the PuTTY window somewhere and press Ctrl C. Okay. And then when it says press enter to activate this console, just press enter. And as you can see, this is the default shell on an Amplifi HD router. Okay. So here's something that might be an annoyance to many people. As you can see, it does start outputting the dmesh command. To stop this, all you have to do is type dmesg and then a space and then -n and then a space again and then 1. Okay, that's it. It has stopped outputting that. Okay, so now we can work freely with the terminal. Now guys, that completes the part 1 of our installation tutorial, that is disassembly and setting up UART. Now the next part of the tutorial is an important one, but not a mandatory one. Okay, that is backing up the original Amplifi HD firmware that is right now running on your Amplifi HD. So it has some advantages. Obviously, if something were to mess up in between, you can easily restore it. That's a topic for another video, but in this video, I'm going to show you how you could back it up and copy it to your Windows machine. Okay, this can be skipped, but I would not recommend that. Okay, so the first step in this part is to obviously back it up. Okay, to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the PuTTY window and type cat space /proc/mtd. Okay, so this does give me an idea about the various partitions of mtd. Okay, so this is the partition that I'm interested in, mtd6. Do you know why? Because it says the firmware, which holds our original firmware. Okay, so make a note of this number. I'm pretty sure that in your case as well, it would be mtd6, but just to be sure, do run this command. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to back it up. To do that, I'm going to type cat space /dev/mtd6 and then a space, a greater than sign, and then a space again, then /tmp/original-firmware.bin. Okay, you can rename this to anything that you want. I'm going to choose original firmware, but do make sure that you do have that .bin extension at the end. Okay, and then press enter. This will take a few seconds to complete. And that's complete, and this original firmware.bin is right now on your router. Okay, let me just quickly show you that. ls space /tmp, and as you can see, the file is right here. Okay, so now we need a way to move this file from the router to our Windows machine. Let's see how we can do that. Okay, so the first thing that I recommend right now, it's not the cleanest way, but at least it is the easiest way for now. That is, we'll have to disable the firewall temporarily. If you're using a third-party antivirus, the steps are going to be different for you. Google is your friend here. But if you are on Windows 10 or 11, it's pretty simple. Let me show you how that's done. Okay, I'm going to go to the search bar, and then type firewall, okay, and then go into this option that says firewall and network protection, okay. So right now the network that I have is public network, which is indicated by this active tag that you see right here. So first of all, I'm going to disable the firewall on here. So I'm going to go into public network and then just click on this toggle and then click on yes to disable it on the public network. Just to be safe, I'm also going to disable it on the private network and the domain network. Okay. You don't have to do this, but all of these have a chance of clashing with the steps that we're going to run in the next few parts of the video. Okay, so to avoid any clashes, I'm going to disable the firewall temporarily. Once the whole installation and setup is complete, I do recommend that you revert back to the original option, that is come back to this page and then click on turn on each one of these. Okay, now we will have to install OpenSSH. I do have the setup file right here. Okay, there's an earlier version of OpenSSH because the latest version of OpenSSH somehow does not work with the BusyBox shell on the Amplifi router. So we'll have to use a downdated version. The link to the GitHub release of this particular version is on my blog. Do check that out in the requirement section. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to extract this archive. Okay, so to do that, I'm going to use a 7-zip and then click on extract here. Okay, and as you can see, the folder has been extracted. It's called OpenSSH Win64. I'm going to rename it quickly to just say OpenSSH without the hyphen or the Win64. Once that is done, I'm going to cut this folder from here, go to my PC and then C drive, program files, and paste it right here. Okay, it is going to ask for administrator permission. So just click on continue and then yes, and it will be copied here successfully. Once that is done, just open this folder. Okay, go here, just click on this address bar and then Control-C to copy this directories path. Okay, now I'm going to come back to the search bar and type cmd and then right click on the command prompt and click run as administrator. Click on yes, and then we'll have the elevated command prompt right here. Now we'll have to change directory to this particular path that you see on your screen right now. Okay, to do that, what I'm going to do is just type cd and then a space and then right click. Okay, the right click just pastes whatever was copied last to the clipboard, and we had copied this path, so that's it right here, and then press enter. So we are right now ready to install the OpenSSH server. Okay, to actually install, I'll have to type PowerShell.exe and then a space hyphen execution policy with the E and the P's in capital, and then space bypass with the B in capitals, and then a space hyphen file with the F in capitals, and then a space and then install hyphen sshd.ps1. Okay, this is the file right here. Yep, here it is. Okay, this is the file that we're going to be using to install the OpenSSH server on Windows 11 or 10 for that matter, and then press enter. And as you can see, it says SSHD and SSH agent services have been successfully installed. Now let's see if they have been properly installed. To do that, what you have to do is PowerShell.exe space get hyphen service with the G and S in capitals, and then a space and then hyphen name with the N in capitals, and then a space and then an asterisk SSH asterisk. Okay, and then press enter. As you can see, both of these have been installed properly and they both say stopped. So the next obvious step is to start them. Okay, to do that, type PowerShell.exe space start hyphen service with both the S in the beginning in capitals, and then a space and then SSHD, and press enter. Okay, now to just see if the service has started successfully, I'm going to type the earlier command again, and as you can see, it now says that SSHD is running. Okay, so that's good. Now if you want this service, that is the SSH server, to run automatically on every boot, all you have to do is type PowerShell.exe space set hyphen service space with both the SS in capital, and then hyphen name with the N in capital, SSHD after a space, and then space hyphen startup type with the S and T in capitals, and then hyphen a colon, single colon, that is automatic, and close the colon. Okay, and then press enter. So this would set it to start automatically on every boot. If you're not planning to, like transfer files from the router to and fro continuously to the Windows PC, I don't recommend that you run this step. Okay. And by the way, you might be wondering, it is very difficult to type these steps one by one. So don't worry, all of these steps are available on my blog. You can go there, just copy from there and right click on the terminal or the command prompt window to paste it. Okay. Since the SSH server is running successfully, now we can go back to the PuTTY window. Okay. But before we run anything, we have to make sure that the router is connected to internet and that a LAN cable actually connects the router to your PC or the Windows machine that we are on right now. Okay. Open up a command prompt. Okay. CMD on the search bar and press enter. This will open the command prompt. Now this is your username. Okay, as you can see, NOOB404 in my case. But if you want to be 100% sure, what you have to do is type who am I and then press enter. As you can see, the string that comes after the / is your username. Make a note of this username. We're going to need this in a few minutes. Okay, and then type ipconfig. Okay, and then press enter. Now find your Ethernet adapter among these. So this is mine, and as you can see, this is my IP address. Okay, so I'm gonna make a note of this IP address as well. We're gonna need that in a few minutes. Okay, now once we have both the username and the IP address with us, all you have to do is go back to PuTTY and then type scp space /tmp /original firmware, and then type your username that we just copied from here. As you can see, in my case, that is noob404, and then @ now provide the IP that we just copied. Okay, this one. Okay, and then a colon and then a /C drive or whatever drive you want to move it to. In my case, I'm going to move it to my desktop, so that's why I'm choosing C drive. Okay, and then a colon /users /noob404 /desktop. Okay, this would copy the firmware file to my desktop. Okay, if you want it to another location, you can change it accordingly here and then press enter. Okay, this is gonna ask if you want to continue connecting. Yes, obviously. And then you will have to provide your password, that is the Windows sign-in password that you have on this machine, okay, or this account, and that would start the copying of the file. And as you can see, it has already appeared on my desktop and it has been copied successfully. Now we're going to keep this file safe somewhere because this is something that we're going to require in the future. Okay. Now, as an additional step, you can verify the integrity of the original firmware file. Now, this can be easily done using the software that is WinMD5. The instructions for the same has been given on my blog. You can check that out as well before proceeding, just to make sure that there's no corruption while copying the file. Okay. That is the original firmware. And that completes the second part of the tutorial, that is backing up the original firmware and moving it to the Windows machine. Okay, now we are actually getting to the part where we're gonna install OpenWrt on the Amplifi HD. The first step in the process is using this little piece of software called TFTP boot to boot a temporary version of OpenWrt. Okay, but before we do all of that, the first thing we'll have to do is disconnect the internet cable from your Amplifi HD router and just connect a single cable. Just connect a LAN cable from port 1 of the router to your PC, nothing else. There should be only two cables on the back of your Amplifi HD router. One being the power cable, which is obviously powering the router, and the second one being the LAN cable, which is connected from port 1 of the router to the PC. I hope I'm making myself clear, okay? And obviously the UART would be connected, that is to the TTL reader. You don't have to disconnect that, we will need that, okay? Now since the internet port is disconnected from the router, we see that we don't have any access to internet connection right now. It's fine, okay? Now press the Windows and R keys together and then type ncpa.cpl, okay? And then press enter. This would open up the adapter window. Now find your Ethernet adapter among these. This is mine, so I'm gonna right click on it and click on its properties, click on yes here. And then find this one, Internet Protocol version 4. Click on it and then click on its properties. Now change this from obtain an IP address automatically to use the following IP address, okay? And now I'm going to type here 192.168.1.254. And then you can just click here to generate the default subnet mask. That's fine, okay? Once that is generated, click on OK and then close it, okay? Now we can close this as well. And now, my friends, it is time to extract the zip archive that contains the firmware, that is the OpenWrt firmware for Amplifi HD. To do that, I'm going to extract it right now to my desktop itself, okay? And it contains a folder which has two firmware files, as you can see right here, okay? The first one will help us to temporarily boot into OpenWrt on Amplifi HD, and the second is a firmware that we're going to use to actually permanently install OpenWrt on the Amplifi HD. Okay, so we have this folder right here, safe and sound. Open this app, TFTPD64. Okay, and then I'm going to quickly go into the server interfaces, go down and choose this one. This is the Ethernet adapter that we had just configured to use this IP. So I'm going to choose that. And then for the current directory, I'm going to go into browse, desktop, and then choose this Amplifi HD OpenWrt firmware folder, which contains our two firmware files. Okay, I'm going to click on OK now, and then we'll just keep it open right here. And then I'm going to go back to my PuTTY window. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to type reboot here and then press enter. But as soon as you press enter, start jamming on any key on your keyboard, okay? Because we want to stop the auto boot on the next boot, okay? To do that, what I'm going to do is press on enter to start the reboot, but I'm also going to keep jamming on any key on my keyboard. Doesn't matter what key, okay? And as you can see, it has successfully stopped the auto boot process. This is clear from this little text that you see here. That is ATH. Okay, so this means that you have successfully stopped the auto boot, and now we are ready to temporarily boot OpenWrt. To do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to type on my PuTTY terminal tftp boot and then a space 0x83 followed by 6 zeros. Okay, 1 2 3 4 5 6, and then a space Amplifi router HD initram fs kernel.bin, which pertains to the temporary firmware file that we have right here, okay, in this folder. And once you have that ready, just press on enter. If everything went well, you can see that the transfer starts from the PC to the router, and it can also be seen on the PuTTY window, and it has been successfully transferred. Now we are ready to boot this. To do that, what I'm going to do is type boot m and then a space 0x83 and then a 6 zeros, 1 2 3 4 5 6, okay, and then press enter. So this will start the boot process for OpenWrt on our Amplifi HD. But remember, this is a temporary version of OpenWrt. If you were to reboot your router at this point, you would soon find that the OpenWrt is gone. You're back to the original firmware, okay? So let me quickly jump to the shell here. The process remains the same. Just press Ctrl C, and when it says press enter, you're back to the shell. But this time around, you won't find Amplifi here. This time around, we find OpenWrt, because this is OpenWrt running on your Amplifi HD. Now let's make this permanent, all right? To do that, we'll have to copy the second firmware file, okay? As you can see, the one here. We'll have to copy this file to our router. Now, how do we do that? To do that, it's pretty simple. All you have to do is press on the address bar here, type cmd and press enter. So this would directly open our folder on command prompt, okay? But this won't be an elevated version. We won't need the elevated command prompt for this step that I'm going to run, okay? Now what I'm going to do is type scp space hyphen capital O and then space the name of this file. We can actually copy it, okay? Do copy the whole thing, including .bin, and then come back to the command prompt and just right click to copy, paste it here, okay? And then provide the destination. We're going to provide the destination in this format, okay? For that, just provide a space after bin and then type root @192.168.1.1, which is the default gateway for any OpenWrt router, which pertains to our router, that is Amplifi HD, okay? And then provide a :/tmp/, okay? And then press enter. Now, some of you might face this error, okay? It says that the identification has changed and stuff. If you have run this process earlier, you're going to face this error. Now, what you have to do is copy this IP, okay? And then come back and then type ssh-keygen and then a space -R, a space, and then provide the IP and press enter, okay? Now let's try running the old command once again to see if it works this time, okay? And then press enter. Now it's going to say if you want to connect, just type yes and press enter, and the process is complete. Now to check if the process is actually complete, I'm going to go back to my PuTTY, which pertains to my Amplifi HD router, which is currently running OpenWrt. Okay, so let's just clear out all of this demeshed output as I had done earlier. Okay, and then I'm going to clear this quickly. Now let's see if we actually have the file in our temporary folder. To do that, just type ls and space /temp. And as you can see, the file has been successfully copied right here. Now we're going to actually flash the permanent version of OpenWrt on our Amplifi HD router. Let's get started. Okay, you can actually close this as well. Now to write this or flash this, all I have to do is type mtd and then space write, a space again, and point it to the location of the sysupgrade file that you have on your temporary folder. Okay, so that is /temp/amplify router hd /fs sysupgrade.bin, and then a space, and then make sure that you're typing firmware. Okay, firmware. Once that is done, just press on enter. Now this process is going to take some time. It takes 1 to 2 minutes on my system. And since we have dropped back to the shell, this means that the process is complete. Now to check, what I'm going to do is I'm going to type reboot and press enter. Wait for the router to reboot, and this time it will be on OpenWrt, and that too permanently. Okay. Now we have booted up successfully. Okay. Now let me quickly drop into the shell now. Okay, I'm going to type Ctrl+C and press enter to drop into the shell. And as you can see, it still says OpenWrt. Okay. Now we'll have to connect to the internet to set up the rest of the process. Let me show you how. Okay. Before connecting to internet, we'll have to go back to our control panel and change the settings that we had done on the Ethernet part, adapter part. Okay. To do that, just press Windows and R together to run and ncpa.cpl and press on OK. Now go to our Ethernet adapters properties, and then go to this Internet Protocol version 4 properties, and switch back to the original option, that is obtain an IP address automatically, and then press on OK. Then close this. Now connect the internet cable back to the router. That is, the router has an internet port that we had disconnected in the earlier part of the process. Now we'll have to connect it back, so we have internet access on both our router and the PC connected to it, that is this Windows machine. Okay, I'm going to quickly do that. Now we do have internet, as you can see right here. I'm going to go back to the putty terminal and stop this and drop back, and then also stop the demesh from printing. Okay, let's quickly clear this. Now there are multiple ways to control your router running OpenWrt. One is obviously through the terminal using the SSH option, or the terminal that you see with your serial TTL reader. Okay, but the best option would be obviously to have a web admin GUI. Okay, now let me quickly go to the browser and see if my web admin GUI is accessible, which is obviously 192.168.1.1, and then press enter. Unfortunately, my friends, it isn't. This is because this image of OpenWrt does not come with Lucy, which is OpenWrt's own web admin GUI. Let us quickly install that. To install that, what I'm going to do is type opkg space update on my putty terminal, and then press enter. Okay, since we connected to the internet, the router can easily connect and update the packages. Okay, once that is done, we are ready to install Lucy. To do that, just type opkg space install space Lucy, LUCI, and then press enter. Now it's gonna install Lucy, and it's gonna take some time. Okay, and it does throw some errors, but I'm pretty sure that Lucy has been installed. To do that, I'm gonna go back here and just remove the S from HTTP, because we don't have SSL installed right now. If you want to install SSL and make it more encrypted, there's an article on OpenWrt's page which has been linked in the blog. Do check that out. Okay, for now I'm going to press enter, and as you can see, we're right here. So there's no root password as of now, so I'm going to just click on login to go into the panel, and the first thing it says that there is no root password set on this. So to set that password, go to password configuration and set a very secure password here. That is very important. That is the first part, obviously, in securing your router. Once that is done, just click on save, and you can just fiddle around with most of the settings here, obviously subject to the legal restrictions or anything else in terms of restrictions in your place or your region. Okay, now the first thing that you're going to notice is wireless is not enabled by default on OpenWrt. To set it up, all you have to do is go into network wireless and then click on enable on these two radios. Okay, now the setup part is complete. You have OpenWrt running on your Amplifi HD. Okay, Do not forget to re-enable the firewall that we had disabled in the earlier part. Okay, now we can easily enable the firewall on your Windows machine. Okay, that's it for this video. In the next video, I'm going to show you how you could restore the original firmware back to the Amplifi HD router. So wait for that. I'll see you in the next video. Bye guys.